Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to the worship service of the First Unitarian Church of Hobart. My name is Barb Lango. I participate in the life of the church by serving on the board of directors, among other things. We are a religious community of people with diverse beliefs and shared values. Our diverse beliefs are expressed in our 6 sources, and our shared values are expressed in our 7 principles, both of which can be found online at uua.org. Together, we strive to grow spiritually, build community, and live our values in the world. I have just a couple announcements. The first one is about 10 minutes after the service, I'll be down in the library with a class for new members. So if anybody is interested besides the couple that I know of, join us down there. And on the first Sunday of next month, which is the 7th, of course, we will be having a new minister. And in greeting the new minister at coffee hour, the church will be providing a cake, and we're asking everybody to bring in a side dish. Let's celebrate. Okay. And until Pastor Tom joins us, we invite members or guests to share a special message with us. This morning, we have Tina Porter and Kristin Schumacher. This service will be recorded and will be available for future viewing on Facebook, YouTube, and the church website. Let your Facebook and Twitter friends know that you're attending worship with hashtag First Unitarian-Hobart. Please silence your devices, take a deep breath, and another, and join us in a spirit of reverence.
Thank you, Roz. Good morning. Our opening words this morning are from Adrian Rich, A Mark of Resistance. Make sure I'm in the right place. Stone by stone, I pile this cairn of my intention, with the noon's weight on my back, exposed and vulnerable, across the slanting fields, which I love but cannot save, from floods that are to come, can only fasten down with this work of my hands these painfully assembled stones in the shape of nothing that has ever existed before. A pile of stones, an assertion that this piece of country matters for large and simple reasons. A mark of resistance, a sign. All of our songs this morning come from your teal hymnal. And Jeremy has told me I have picked poor songs for our singing. But I know we can go on, which is number 1015 in your hymnal. And we are going to do our best and show everyone that we are a Unitarian Universalist crowd of singers.
Please rise if you're able.
And Don is here to help us do our best.
It was already lit in spirit, so.
Aren't we all? Beautiful, beautiful. Would you remain standing for the affirmation of faith, which is also printed in your order of service? Where we are going to greet each other carefully. The words here say something different. I'll read them. We are striving to create a worship space which is both spiritual and safe. We recognize that not everyone can attend in person, We extend a special welcome to everyone who is joining us virtually today, and thank you to our tech team for making the live streaming and recording possible. Due to the increase in COVID-19 cases and the more infectious, whatever the new variant is, please greet your neighbor from where you stand. It's so good to see you all, and you online as well. Good morning. It's still morning, right? Last amen at the end of the doxology. So thank you all for sharing with that. Speaking of sharing, are there words for that too that I'm missing? No, I'll just make it up. This is the time in our service where we share our personal joys and sorrows, those moments too great to carry on our own, whether with joy or in sadness. I will walk around with the mic and reiterate what you've said if it's not able to be heard by everyone. And I will be right down there with the mic. If you have joys or sorrows to share with the group, please raise your hand.
Good morning. The story today is called Smile, Sophia by And now if you would join me, well, maybe not me, in singing the hymn number 1011. Again, it's in the teal hymnal, and it's Return Again. And how many times?
We're going to sing it through twice. and Jeremy, of course. Would there be two people strong of arms who would be willing to help distribute some stones throughout the congregation? Noel, thank you, and Brian, thank you. So, whether you wish to participate in what we're calling a stone ceremony later, I would like you to take a stone at this point for the meditation. And just a caution, in case you're like me and you're really concerned about picking the right stone, please be assured there is no right stone. See, I've got at least 4 right stones right on my hands. There's no right, no wrong stone. These are just what you hold is what you hold. And as we're passing out the stones, I'll give you an idea of where I'm at this week. So earlier this week, I attended the memorial service for the mother of a friend of mine, a very giving and loving woman. Her daughter is the same. And during the funeral, the rabbi read, I can never say this right, Ecclesiastes. And I know you know it, even if you don't, like me, have a firm grasp of the Bible. You may know it as a song by the Byrds, A Time for Everything. It runs down the litany of things that it is time for. Perfect. Thank you both. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them. It continues on, but my mind stuck right there because I was working on this service with Kristin at the time. And I started thinking, I mean, this is all well and good. There's the born and die, plant and uproot. But what about all that time in between? What about that time that we spend between those two extremes? So I'd like us to do a little prayerful meditation on the in-between today. And since we will be using these stones as a reference point during the sermon, let's start there. Jen's way ahead of me. She's rubbing her stone. I don't have a stone. Hold on. Just doing this, so think about that. We'll be doing that soon. So let's start with holding the stone gently in your hand, relaxing your shoulders as best you can. Close your eyes if you feel called to do so. And if you're wearing a mask, we're all going to take breaths, but you take as deep a breath as you can and wish to release while you're masking, which we all probably ought to be doing, but today is weird. So I'd like you to start by breathing in and breathing out. Again, breathe in and breathe out. As I ask you to contemplate a thing or two as we continue on, I want you to keep breathing. I want you to notice it coming in and going out. As you notice your breath, take notice too of the stone you hold in your hand. Consider where it may have been collected. Is it the shores of Lake Michigan or a desert far away? Maybe it comes from alongside our railroad tracks outside. Consider where it came from originally. The bang so big it made a universe of matter. Caress that matter with your fingers as you continue to breathe in and breathe out. Consider what purposes this rock may have been put to by humans. Maybe it was gathered to create a home or a wall to keep someone out. Maybe it was cast out from a path or a field. Maybe it was thrown at someone, used in ritual violence or a schoolyard brawl. Take a breath in. And hold the stone between the palms of your hands. Rub your hands slowly. Breathe out. Wonder what vistas this rock may have seen, what mountains it might have tumbled down, what pedestrian may have stumbled on it or poured it out from within their shoe. Consider we don't just gather or scatter stones. Consider that you, me, us, we, too, are made of the matter cast out from that Big Bang. Hold the stone, feel its weight. Feel your own weight. Feel the weight that isn't yours, that holds you up and drags you down. Both and. Feel the weight of the stone as it sits in your hand. Feel the weight of the stone. Also feel the weight of gravity as it holds both you and the stone and your neighbors and even the train tracks here together right now, separate and together, separate and together. Take a few more breaths and open your eyes when you're ready, continuing to feel the weight of the stone, and decide, as we listen to the music, decide if it is your weight to carry or if it is time for you to release your stone into your lap, onto the floor, onto the pew. You can still hold it. You can give it away. You can tuck it in your pocket. Do what feels right. Take a few more breaths, and we'll listen to Jeremy.
The stone that I just placed on the table there is for work, which is what I'll be commenting on this morning. I never questioned whether or not I would work. By work, I mean have a career where I would exchange labor for money and other benefits like insurance and vacation days. However, I knew I wouldn't be like my parents, whose blue-collar jobs didn't seem to fulfill any deeper needs or aspirations. After all, unlike them, I attended college, and isn't that what an education is supposed to provide for you? An opportunity to make money doing something worthwhile? I expected to gain employment that provided me with a sense of meaning and purpose. So I ended up working for little money in fields where poor salaries were supposedly balanced out by the warm, fuzzy feelings of making a difference. And when I found I could no longer work due to mental health issues, I felt worthless and powerless. Worthless within the context of the capitalist world outside my home, the world that places one's adult value on the money and wealth one generates, and the prestige of a career that commands respect and admiration. Powerless because I have absorbed a message that those who do not make money should have no voice. Where did I get this idea that the best place to create a meaningful life was through a job? Who is selling this story? In Charlotte Perkins Gilman's short story, The Yellow Wallpaper, published in 1892, the narrator, a woman, writer, and mother, is ordered to rest and relax by her physician husband. She is prescribed phosphates and tonics and journeys and air and exercise, and she is not allowed to work until she is feeling well. The narrator disagrees with this diagnosis and believes that work would be good for her. Unfortunately, work is not an option. Her husband tells her that her imaginative power and habit of story making will make her overly excited while she longs for the stimulating conversations about her writing with her peers. Without an outlet for her imagination and without meaningful labor, she deteriorates mentally. She laments that the effort she's putting into her recovery is getting to be greater than the relief. Eventually, she begins to see moving patterns in the wallpaper in the room she's locked in, and she loses connection with reality. In this story, work is the solution to the problem of womanhood and motherhood. The narrator sought meaning and purpose, which she derived from writing and discussing her work, not from her role as a wife and mother. She was denied this opportunity to her detriment. Like the narrator, I believed that work served as an outlet for my creativity and my desire to do good in the world. I also didn't feel fulfilled by my domestic responsibilities. However, locked in my house and without a job for 2 years due to the pandemic, I became even more like this nameless narrator. My haywire imagination concocted threats only I could perceive. I struggled with the most mundane tasks. Like Gilman's protagonist, I became burdened by all the energy I was putting into getting better and improving myself, whatever that means. Would work have solved this? I have a difficult time answering that question. Work during a pandemic is different than work before the rampant spread of a novel and deadly virus. I may have succumbed to my fears of disease and death, so work likely wasn't a cure for my mental state at that time. Now that I'm again looking for a job, it might be time for me to dispel the myth that I should be mentally and spiritually satisfied by the work I do. Joseph Campbell, author of The Hero with 1,000 Faces, stated, "Life has no meaning. Each of us has meaning, and we bring it to life. It is a waste to be asking the question when you are the answer." This is a tough concept for me to internalize, as I'm generally unconvinced that I could be the answer to anything. I am tempted, though, to release the expectation that emptying the dishwasher should fill me with satisfaction. Or maybe this chore could bring me a sense of accomplishment if I took Campbell's advice. I also need to come to terms with the fact that perhaps work isn't anything other than a means to an end, not a solution to an existential problem. Work cannot be the antidote to being a wife or a mother or a woman. I have to work, regardless of those parts of my identity. Perhaps it is best to accept that working for any other reason other than money is a privilege that can be accessed by only some. After all, it's the expectation that it should be otherwise that is so frustrating. Work cannot erase the fact that I have had to be employed to survive, and that because my education did not allow me to transcend my social class, I don't really have a choice in the matter. Gilman's narrator didn't have a choice either. Her husband overrides her wishes. She is another in a host of women whose context prevent them from making choices, yet who are burdened by expectations of who they should be and what they should do with their time. By the end of her story, Charlotte Perkins Gilman's narrator believes she has escaped from the grotesque yellow wallpaper, and she creeps and crawls along the wall like the other women who she is convinced have gained freedom from its confines. The reality is that she's on her hands and knees, her dress stained with yellow, trapped by expectations imposed on her by powerful others. Women shouldn't have to trade their sanity for a false freedom, when true freedom is attainable if we replace stones of expectation imposed not only by ourselves but also by others with real choices, opportunities, and equity.
Should have introduced you. We're both so polite, Kristin and I. So I really like Kristin's words about choice over expectation. And I think I've finally hit an age where I consider expectations to be a form of mental illness. They're like the wishes my sister and I used to make on haystacks when I was a kid. We'd be driving on the freeway in California, you'd see the truck with the haystacks on it, and we'd make wishes, and we had to do this hand smack or it wouldn't come true, which was, so that meant it was gonna be coming true. And so sometimes expectations can be like that haystack wish. My age has something to do with it. I'm lucky enough to live this long and still have my mother with me. And my 3 daughters are all in that age of great expectation of 20-something. I'm also lucky enough to have married a man who is supportive of my need to spend time with my mother and our daughters. And so it is that I come back from a month away in Arizona where I had plenty of time and opportunity to ruminate on all of the expectations I have held in my lifetime, all of the expectations I have held in my lifetime. Those made for me, those I made up for myself, and those I've held for others. My mother's expectations for me come from a life she did not get to live because, like the woman in the yellow room Kristin talked about, there were norms that locked her out of the rooms she most wanted to be in, specifically academia. There was time and money for her brothers to attend college, but not for her. Still, she pursued her dream, and before she could finish her degree, she married my father at age 20 and began having the first of 4 children, the last of whom was me when she was 27. In that time, somehow, she managed to complete her bachelor's degree. She became a kindergarten teacher about the time I entered kindergarten. And during my childhood, she worked during the school year and spent summers making us clothes and whatever else mothers did while their feral children were out hanging from trees and splashing in sprinklers and running to the corner grocery store they much later in life learned was actually a liquor store. But there was candy. Not attending college was never an option for me. I know that's a double, triple negative, something like that. But it was never if you go to college, but when, expectation. When we were kids, someone somehow gave us a board game that was all about the choices for girls when they grow up. You could become a librarian or a secretary or a stewardess, which was the word we used then and was on the board game, or a housewife. My mother hated that game, and I don't know how it survived as long as it did. And she would stand over us while we were playing it and say things like, "Don't be a secretary, be the lawyer. Don't be a stewardess, be the pilot." You get the idea. I think I even heard her say one time, "Don't be the wife, be the husband." But that's a story for another day. My mother and my teachers were baffled by me and my lack of accomplishment as a child. I really was smart. Age sort of took that away a little bit, but I was smart as a kid, and there's no denying that. I was so smart I could achieve good grades with little effort, and unless there was something sparking my interest, you could not bribe me in any way to do the thing that was not easy or good enough. I had potential, expectation. "You're so good at math. We need more women in sciences. You should use your math skills in computers." Expectation. But I wasn't really all that good at math. I was just a girl with undiagnosed ADHD, see above, who was good at recognizing patterns but not so good at imaginary numbers. Imaginary people intrigued me, and I really was good with words, so I claimed my major as English literature and crushed my mother's dream of me becoming the next or the first Steve Jobs, even though Steve Jobs wasn't even yet Steve Jobs. So she knew I could have been a contender. She just knew it. Expectation. My mother now, though, claims that I am a born writer and tells all her friends or whoever will listen about how I spent so much of my time as a child observing the world and reflecting on it. But at the time when it mattered, when it could have pushed me one direction or another, all I heard was, "You're so good at math. How will you make a living?" I hate to reveal this part of it, but that expectation thing is just like a rolling stone, and it rolled right onto my own daughters. But they got it from me, my mother, and their father. "What will you do with this one glorious life?" But not in the way that Mary Oliver asks. Like I said, our girls are now at that tender age of trying to understand who they are and what they want moving forward. And they don't just have stupid board games and relatives to heap expectations on them. They have the whole wide world web, telling them they can herd goats and make soap and make a living selling it soap on the internet. And if they aren't living their best life right now, well, then they're just wasting time and space. That's a heavy expectation. I love the quote Kristin shared from Joseph Campbell, and I wish I'd read it when I was my daughter's ages, for someone to suggest that I brought the meaning and could make the work meaningful would have reframed a lot for me as I grew older. The quote made me think of Brian's mother. When we first moved here 26 years ago, I went to the eye doctor for the first time, and he asked me with great excitement, "Are you related to Thelma Porter?" "Yes, yeah," I said, "she's my mother-in-law." "Oh," he said, "she sold me my first pack of baseball cards at the drugstore." And he went on, every time I went to the eye doctor, he had to retell that story. Because he was a small boy and she was so kind, and every time he saw her after that. Her life, her career had been in service. When she died in 1996, she had been a deli cashier at what was then Wiseway for several years. I know the work wasn't easy, and I heard enough stories from her about the people who were less than kind. But as we stood in the receiving line at her funeral, all I heard were stories of her kindness and her care. She remembered everybody's name. She remembered their kids' names. She remembered their grandchildren's names. She remembered who was going off to college, who was coming back from college. She remembered it all. And she made people feel cared for in the most mundane of activities of getting your cheese and meat. It was her ministry. She brought meaning to her work and to the people who interacted with her. After our oldest daughter was laid off a few months ago, don't worry, she's on her feet again. She and I had a heart-to-heart wherein I think I might have channeled Campbell, but a little twisted. I said to her, there's nothing wrong with having a job that pays well and allows you to live the way you'd like to. I could feel through the phone the release of an expectation she held for herself and that she thought I held for her. I was supposed to talk about family, and I realize I'm talking more about work, but family is weird. And it seems that work and family and expectation are, I'm going to stretch this metaphor to its death, but like those stones that are crashing against each other all up and down Lake Michigan. But family, work, and expectation are always in the mix. Although I don't have a job right now, there are some expectations for me to make money to add to the family coffers. Some days that work looks like I'm playing with string for no good reason. Some days I can feel expectation oozing from Brian, even though he does his best to understand that some days just aren't good ones for me, thanks to a chronic illness that causes pain and a neurodivergence that makes that work look like chaos. Some days I manage his expectations with grace. Some days I just get snippy. And I finally realized the other day when I did get snippy with him that it's because I'm not managing my own expectations of myself and my abilities well at that moment. But the other thing I want you all to realize as we talk about family and expectations, I really need you to understand that without Brian, without my mother, without those daughters who are so daughtery, I know I would be free-floating and not in a good way. Times are different from when my mother was coming of age and from when I was, and yet times are not so different in that when a woman, especially, please let's all hold this one, especially a woman of color, especially a black woman with 18 advanced degrees, asserts her right to exist in the world in any way she wishes. Societal norms, expectations, and the whole damn internet are all there to cover her light with a bushel, and just to be clear, put stones on top of the bushel. If we are, as Campbell says, the meaning that is brought to the world, perhaps we can take some time to excise expectations for ourselves and for others. Even if we can't get rid of them altogether, perhaps if we can simply look at those expectations, look at them for what they are, notice, take a breath, and move on. If we can hold on to the importance of the connection being made in the expectation, as Brian's mom used to say, I just want my kids to be happy. The connection being made in the expectations rather than in the results of expectations not being met. I believe we can carry as many stones as we wish and lay down many more and still be better prepared to meet the moment we are actually in. It's the teaching of Ecclesiastes, of Zen Buddhism, of Taoism, and of Mary Oliver's Wild Geese. It isn't easy stuff, and yet it is very simple. May it be so.
Now is the time in our service for our offering. We give to remind ourselves how many gifts we have to offer. We give to remember that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. We give because we believe in music and sacred space. We give with the faith that together we have enough. There is an online link on the screen for both one-time and regular donations. You can also contribute in person by putting paper money and loose change in these baskets and cups. The money in the basket goes to sustaining the mission of our community. The money in the cups goes to our Faith and Action Committee and a different charity chosen by this committee every month. This month's charity is the Everytown for Gun Safety. Please try not to touch the baskets and cups as our ushers bring them to you. Your presence, your service, and your gifts, we are truly grateful. Please join in singing the closing hymn number 1057, 1057 in the teal hymnal. Please stand as you are willing and able. Our closing words are written by Audre Lorde. It's a poem called A Litany for Survival. This poem really speaks to me. For those of us who live at the shoreline, standing upon the constant edges of decision, crucial and alone. For those of us who cannot indulge the passing dreams of choice, who love in doorways, coming and going, in the hours between dawns, looking inward and outward, at once before and after, seeking a now that can breed futures, like bread in our children's mouths, so their dreams will not reflect the death of ours. For those of us who were imprinted with fear like a faint line in the center of our foreheads, learning to be afraid with our mother's milk. For by this weapon, this illusion of some safety to be found, the heavy-footed hoped to silence us, for all of us, this instant and this triumph. We were never meant to survive. And when the sun rises, we are afraid it might not remain. When the sun sets, we are afraid it might not rise in the morning. When our stomachs are full, we are afraid of indigestion. When our stomachs are empty, we are afraid we may never eat again. When we are loved, we are afraid love will vanish. When we are alone, we are afraid love will never return. And when we speak, we are afraid our words will not be heard nor welcomed. But when we are silent, we are still afraid. So it is better to speak, remembering we were never meant to survive.
Freight train running so fast. Freight train running so fast. Please don't tell them what train I'm on, so they won't know which route I go. When I die, Lord, bury me deep, way down on Old Chestnut, can hear old she goes rolling by. Freight train running so fast. Freight train running so fast. Please don't tell them what train I'm on, so they won't know which route I go. When I'm dead and in my grave, no more good times here I'll crave. Place the stones at my head and feet, and tell them all I've gone to sleep. Freight train running so fast. Freight train running so fast. Please don't tell them what train I'm on, so they won't know which route I go.
Once we're done reciting the extinguishing of the chalice and we're leaving, I would like to invite you to add your stone or recreate something with the stones that are there on your way out. And again, you are free to carry the stones with you if you so wish. Now join me as we extinguish the chalice. Thank you again, Roz. We extinguish
this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
That was yours. In case you want to say that
Yeah.
for posterity.
Yes.